Hi. Hi, I'm Stephen Sachs. I'm the artistic director of the Fountain Theater. And welcome to Theater Talk. We are streaming live on Facebook and on Twitter, on Zoom, on YouTube, and on our Fountain Theater website. And if you're watching on Zoom and you have a question for our guest, just type your question into the Q&A balloon at the bottom of your screen. And if you're watching on Facebook, you can type your question in the chat. Our guest today is the founding artistic director of Playwrights Arena, which was founded in 1992. And it is dedicated to discovering, nurturing, and producing new plays written solely by Los Angeles playwrights. He has directed many critically acclaimed world premieres at Playwrights Arena, and is also, I mean, he's got to be, in my opinion, like one of the hardest working theater directors in Los Angeles. He, before COVID, of course, he was always all over town directing shows throughout Southern California. He's the recipient of the first Career Achievement Award from Stage Raw, a New York Fringe Festival Award, an LA Weekly Award, and is a five-time Ovation Award nominee. Please welcome my friend, Jon Lawrence Rivera. Jon?
Hello, everyone. Hi.
Hey.
Hi. So glad to be here. And thank you for everyone who's tuning in.
Well, it's great to have you. It's so good to see you. How are you holding up? How are you holding up during this time of COVID?
Well, the interesting thing is I found my passion for cooking once again. I mean, when before COVID, I mean, we've been, I'm always in rehearsals, in and out of rehearsals and running Playwrights Arena, and I don't really have time to cook for myself. So in this last 10 weeks or so, I've been cooking up a storm and actually trying to get back to my Filipino roots and trying to learn some of the recipes that my mom would make or my grandparents would make. So I've been learning that, and because I can't make just one pot for myself, I'm always making enough for several people. So a lot of them are being given away to artists, and we've been trading food. So it's been very good.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone had, for those of us who have access to Jon's Facebook page, it's like this amazing thing is happening. All of these theater people are coming by Jon's house. There's a picture of Jon, and so has just swung by, and you're handing out the chicken adobo, and it's fantastic.
It is quite amazing. And I was telling my sister the other day that I would make pancit or adobo, but by the time I trade it, my refrigerator is filled with all this other food that I didn't cook, because we would just trade off, and I would get a pasta and some Cuban dishes, and so different things that people have traded my food with. So it's been very good.
Is that the exchange that you give something and then they bring something, and there's
it's not, I always tell my artist friends, because of the time that we're in, that there's no need for a trade, but most people come in and they have something that they've cooked. I mean, Jessica Kubzansky sent me we traded. I gave her some adobo and she gave me some avocado toast ingredients and packets. So it's been that way of exchange, so which is good.
Someone suggested that the LA theater community should do a cookbook of some put together.
Yeah. I think we should all do. I mean, I think we should do it, because I feel like there is we would have a lot of recipes in there that that we can all share.
Yeah. Now I remember Playwrights Arena being, I think it was certainly the first theater that I knew of that made the decision to the painful decision to close down, to shut down its entire season. And you did it first, as far as I remember,
Yeah.
you did it early. And I was stunned when I got that news. And at the time, I just thought, oh, that's so premature. How can they be doing that? It's too early. And it turned out that you were right, that you and your board had made the correct decision. Talk to me about how that decision was made with your.
Yeah. Well, the timing just happened that we had a board meeting the week before we shut down everything, and we uh, we have a doctor on our board who works at City of Hope, and he's the one, and at our board meeting was saying, John, no one's gonna come in the next few days because they're gonna this is going to be really bad, and they're gonna shut down everything. And literally out of the 8 board members, I was the one who's like, no, 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 no. We have a fundraiser to do. We
Yeah.
have 2 more shows coming. We have a development. I mean, we had so many things planned, like everybody, for the rest of the year. And I kept saying, no, 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 we can't do this. And every board member was like, we got to do this. We got to listen to Dr. Ray. We got to really, we have to trust that what he's saying is true and that he has the right knowledge. So I was defeated by that, and I had to agree with them, but I felt really bad because I felt like I'm shutting down what I care for and what I want, like most of us do. But we had to make that decision. So Tuesday morning, we announced that we were shutting down, and we were the first one. And then I think it took about 3 or 4 more days before one after another, theaters started to shut down. But it's only because we had a board meeting, and our doctor on the board said, no one's going to be able to get out at some point, in
Yeah,
the next few days.
the doctor knew what was coming.
Yeah, he certainly did. And so, he's been our expert on all of this throughout. So, which has been very helpful to figure out what we want to, where we're going to go.
Right. Now, shortly thereafter, artistic directors and artistic leaders from about 50 to 60 theaters throughout Los Angeles have been meeting on Zoom every Tuesday to strategize, to advocate, to buck each other up, swap stories, but also to be proactive. What is the purpose of this weekly gathering? And
Well,
what are the goals?
yeah, I think when Gary started inviting people into this roundtable, really it was in response to COVID-19, and really trying to put our resources together to figure out how we're going to survive this time that we are unable to do our shows in the normal way that we've been doing it. And I think from that beginning of that conversation, we got into a few weeks later into the Black Lives Matter. We got into, racial inequality coming up to the front. So I think our roundtable conversations are really responding to the COVID-19 and how we're going to survive that. And now, in addition to that, when we resurface, what are our theaters going to look like in light of Black Lives Matter and racial equality and all of that stuff? So I think, our goal originally, I think, is expanding as to what we're looking at. It's not just like, where are we going to get funding? Where are the resources? Where can we get, help and support? But now really helping each other in rethinking what our future is going to look like when we resurface. Because at this point, it may not be until, the spring or fall of next year before we can go into the theaters again. So, it's a long time.
Yeah, as you know, John, with your company and for myself with the Fountain Theater, part of our job has always been also to just remind the public how important and essential theater is. And that can be howling at the wind sometimes because of streaming and the internet and movies and getting people away from their screens and coming to the theater. And I think since the beginning of time, it's always been a task to remind the public how important and essential theater is. And I just think ahead too, as you're talking about reopening, whenever that is, and what that landscape may look like, how people will be financially, and what kind of health precautions may be necessary. How in your opinion, what role will theater take in the healing of our city, of Los Angeles, and in the country?
Yeah, I mean, it's a big question, and I'm not sure that there is one answer to it. I think one of the things that we can really, as we look forward into the future, is really how do we embrace all this cultural differences that we have, and how do we embrace them into our programming? I mean, Fountain Theater has been doing it, I think, for a long time, of really having a diverse program of multicultural plays, and even in plays that may be written by a white playwright, it is still a multiculturally produced play. And I think, and Playwrights Arena does the same thing. And I think as we do, I feel like a lot of the theaters who have been behind that are starting to catch up to how to do that. And sometimes it's up to people who have done it to sort of like guide them and give them some assistance as to how that might be possible, because it is just something that it's not in their psyche. I mean, the whole notion of regional theaters started in the 50s with white people, and so they were thinking as the norm are white plays with white actors and white designers and every directors. So how are we going to embrace that? How are we going to embrace Native American artists? How are we going to embrace Asian American artists? How are we going to embrace everybody of all cultures, Black, Latino, and LGBTQ, and all of the varieties that we have, and still be true to our mission, because each of us have our own mission. So how do we do that? And I think my solution to it is to really talk to people like you, and get some guidance as to how that is possible.
You were born in the Philippines, right?
Yes.
Right.
Born and raised. We arrived here in the States in July of 1979. So it's been 40 years. When I was 10 years old.
Tell me about your parents.
So my dad, well, he passed away about 7 years ago. He was a journalist, and later in his career, he was a playwright. He was very, very much a political writer, and so he was against the Marxists when we were in the Philippines. When he had his own magazine, he was writing anti-Marcos information. And when martial law was implemented in 1972, he was blacklisted. And because of that, he couldn't get a job. And the Australian government invited him to do some articles in Australia. So he went to Sydney, Australia, and eventually got political asylum over there. So in 1975, my mom and my brother and my sister went to Australia and joined him there. And I was always interested in theater. So after high school, I was studying with the ensemble studio theater in Australia as an actor, studying as an actor. And then in 1978, we got our visas approved to come to the United States. So we came in July of '79, and you know and lived here since then. I and Unfortunately, my father never joined us here in the States, so my mother was our sole parent the entire time that we've been here in the United States. And she, I think her resilience as a single mother raising three kids in a foreign land, I think that kind of resilience is the thing that I get. And so when we have COVID-19 and we have to shut down the theater, I still am like resilience again. Like, no, 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 we can't do that yet. But
Right.
I think you have to be responsible, and so that's what you lean into. But as you know, running a theater company, I mean, there are many times that we just want to say, all right, that's it, let's lock the door and throw the keys and just walk away. But I mean, I think there's a certain kind of people that run theaters and keep it running for a very long time. And both of us have been running our theaters. I mean, you're at least 30 years old now running your company, and we're 28 years old, and that's a long time, and we're still in it because we have that drive, we have that resilience in us, that when funding goes out, when audiences start to dwindle, when all of those other things are happening, we still stay at it, and because we really believe in what theater does. So
Did you have a magic moment when you were a kid, that when either you were sitting in a theater and you saw a performance, or there was a teacher or something that made you go, oh, I want to do that?
yeah, well, that's the most interesting thing about my journey, and I think for a lot of people, um, because I think what is visible to us are always what we see, and so the directing part for me came much later because I
Yeah,
could only see the acting part. So, and it's in the theater, so I thought, oh, to be in the theater, I have to be an actor.
right.
And For me, there are two things that happened in my life that I feel, got me started into all of these things. So, when I was much younger, in the Philippines, we always have typhoons and monsoon rain, and we have a two-level house, and our house will get flooded every time, and so we'll end up with no electricity upstairs in the second level of the house, and we're pretty much there for a week at a time because the flood is just up there, down there, and won't subside. So no television, and there's nothing to entertain us. So I would make puppets. I would make like on a stick, and I would create a whole show for my family, that I would create like a whole like plot and storytelling, and with just a candle and just this characters talking and doing that. So now, I mean, of course, you don't know what that is until much later. So you're like, oh, that's interesting. And then later on, before we left the Philippines, I think I was maybe 12 or something. We went to the cultural center for the first time. Our school brought us to the cultural center, and we went to see Diary of Anne Frank, and it was the Anne was being played by Marcus's daughter, one of Marcus's daughter. I think it's Amy Marcos. So it was the first time I had been inside the theater that was that big, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to be, and this is where I want to be. But growing up in the Philippines, being a theater actor or being in the theater is not something that is even like considered as a career. So I never really thought that would be a career for me until we left the Philippines. When I went to Australia, then I thought, oh, this is a possibility. But I think, if I were still in the Philippines and never left, I mean, I don't know exactly my path, but I was going to go into hotel management. That's where I was going to go after high school, was hotel management. But then we left before high school ended, and I went to Australia. And then after high school there, I went to the ensemble theater and studied with them. So that became my path.
And then when you came to the States, then you ended up at LA City College,
That's
right?
right. That's
Which
right.
I went to LA City College,
Yeah. Yeah.
LACC, and Justin Tanner, I
Yes.
as
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
And David Franklin, and and several people that.
Luke
Yeah.
Skywalker.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of people. That's the one of like one of the first two or three plays of Justin Tanner I produced because I knew people around his circle that said, and at that time I was already
Uh,
starting to just produce independently, and people would go, oh, there's Justin Tanner has this play, and and we would just rent a theater and just do it until Ted Schmidt found found Justin Tanner and then went on to the Cast Theater.
right. And that's, of course, how you and I first met.
Yeah.
That was back in 1987. If you
I was trying to figure. I knew it was before 1990 because I started in Playwrights in '92, and I knew it was like way before, like 1980, like late in the '80s.
Yeah, yeah. You were a producer on my production of The Baron in the Trees at Ensemble
Beautiful
Studio
production.
Theater here in Los
Yeah.
Angeles. You and Alan Toy were the two producers, and
Yeah.
yeah, that was really a wonderful
That
experience.
was a wonderful experience, and I think a lot of my early days as a producer, independent producer, and working with different theaters, I think that has been an extension of my education because I was able to sit in rehearsal rooms and in production meetings and really understand the different dynamics and different ways of creating theater. And I think, I think that that's one of the valuable experiences that I had early on because I was jumping from one theater to another and experiencing different ways of operation. And I think, I took the best of what I could get and then gave enough of my gave enough power for myself to say, all right, I guess I could do this,
I can do this, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I'd like to spend the next little section, if it's all right with you, just talking shop. I want to kind of talk about just the nuts and bolts of being a director. And if anyone who's watching has a question for Jon about directing, if you're an actor or if you're a director, or just a public viewer of the question about the work of a director, we have one here to talk to. So I mean, just this is like really fundamental stuff.
Yeah.
So and like you and I were kind of joking before we came on, we got to kind of remember we haven't done this in a while, but we've been in lockdown for so long. But I mean, kind of the fundamental question in your mind, in your opinion, what does a director do? In your opinion, what is the fundamental role of a theater director?
Well, I mean, I think, especially because I have Playwrights Arena and I have spent 28 years of my life devoted into working with new work. My answer to that is my role is to make sure that I deliver the play that the playwright wanted to get out there and help him or her showcase the work that she wrote or he wrote, and really present that in the best possible way. It doesn't mean that I am there to just do whatever he or she thought about of the play that she wrote or he wrote, but really how they want that I can ask them the important questions of how to shape that play and help present it. So it's a lot of asking questions and really investigating with the playwright what they mean about certain things, so that you don't so that you get to relay that, because sometimes what they might think in their head works, or in the way that it might be presented could be presented in a much stronger and more dynamic way if I use another way of presenting it. So I think my role has been really helping playwrights to just really showcase their work and be seen and be reflected, and I always say that at the end of my rehearsal process, when I open a play and And if the playwright is really happy with the project, then I feel like I have done my job, no matter what whoever else says anything about it, because I want to make sure that, that we have done something together that is genuine and truthful to what they wanted to say.
Do you feel like the best kind of stage direction is invisible and not seen, or does that, it kind of depends, or do you think it's important, or it can be effective for an audience to be aware of a director's hand in a moment or in a scene?
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting thing, because I think it's in two. You can do it in two ways, because there are plays that are so unwieldy and has no real structure, that really requires a director's hand to be imposed on it, so that you can put some kind of through line to it, or some kind of, to ground it, right? To really ground something that is like just pieces of monologues and things like that needed to be like, put down, and you need the strong hand for that. Now, when it's a really well structured play, I think you want to allow your actors to discover the play, and not so much no, because I have seen this. I have seen in one when I was younger, I have seen directors, internationally known directors, who would literally say, before you say that word, turn to your right. And I'm like, so, there are these things that I felt like, what does it matter whether they turn left or right to say the line, or why do they have to pause? I mean, but, so I wanted actors to be, to be free, because I want them to have ownership of the work that they're doing. One of the things that I always prepare for is that I have a real vision, and this is when the puppetry thing works for me, because when I'm preparing a play, I literally have little like animals and pieces that I move around, because I keep forgetting who's in the room. When you're reading it, it goes, oh, wait a minute, he left. Oh, he left like three pages ago, right? So I have to literally like put it in a box and go, they enter, and I'm reading it. Okay, and then she left, and like, so I'm doing this like puzzle, right? And so in my head, I'm already constructing like the movement of it. But when I go into rehearsal, I let the actors sort of like feel the room and then guide them, instead of saying, no, you sit down on that moment and then you come, because I mean, I can guide them into that, but it feels more organic for actors to have ownership of the work if they are discovering it on their own, instead of me saying that's what you should do, right? So it's been it's always a challenge, because you want actors who are flexible and open-minded, and also inspired, and can take a scene forward, instead of I always say in first day of rehearsal, I want actors who have some idea, and not just standing there going, what should I do?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's a harder process for me, because now I'm gonna like spoon feed you everything that you're supposed to do, instead of have an idea about it, and then let's shape from that, So
it's so funny for me to hear you say that you move around little pieces to think through how the play moves, and because I storyboard everything. Yeah. I like to draw, so I think the visual aspect of a production is always important. And like you, it just helps me kind of think about a scene, or about how a scene's, the blocking might move. And that's so right. I feel like probably you feel the same way, that part of the director's job is to come into a rehearsal prepared, fully prepared, to have a sense of the overall, how a scene's going to move. And you may even have some visual images in mind that you want to achieve. So it's a combination of being prepared and being spontaneous and alive and open to whatever happens in the room, and not afraid to take a good idea.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think I have, I feel like I have some really strong ideas about a certain moment, but then if I just impose that, and that's the only thing that people are doing, some actor might come in and just say, I was thinking maybe I would do this. And I'm like, oh my God, so much better. All right, let's take that and let's see where that goes, because that's where, I don't want to like say no, 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 no. No, you really need to. I feel like there's a way to encourage that and really use those kinds of
Absolutely.
uh,
Take
yeah,
and take all the credit for it.
yeah, absolutely, yeah,
It was
yeah.
all your idea.
That's right. That's right. Listen, I'm like, it's fine with me. If it's good, then good. I always say if it's good, it's because of a lot of people. When it's bad, it's me. It's me alone. Because it's like because I allowed it to happen, right? I mean, if there was a bad choice and I
Yeah,
made it happen, then it was my it was my decision to keep it on. And
right.
so if it's really great and I let it stay, then it's everybody's work. So
Exactly. Right. And there's nothing more exciting than being in a rehearsal room and figuring out a problem with the cast and yourself. And then you find the solution and you feel like you've done something together as
yeah.
one kind of living organism. And
Yeah.
that is such a rush.
Yeah, I mean, I've sometimes said to rehearsals in my rehearsal rooms that I go, this moment has always challenged me, and I really don't have a good answer to how to make this work. And so let's figure it out and let's sort it out. And I think I think actors then feel like, oh, okay, well, let's all like pull together and figure out how to make that work.
Well, John, I think that that's really important what you just said. And a director's ability to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of directors are afraid of that and to make
Well, I have a feeling, maybe I just forgotten it, but I feel like maybe in my early years of directing, maybe I said I know it. No, no, that's the answer. But I think as I learned, as I grew older, and in this process, I felt like, why am I burdening myself with having all the answers? Why should I have all the answers?
Mhm.
I mean, I should investigate, and I should definitely research, and I should definitely do the work. But sometimes you just come up short, and you embrace that, and you say, listen, this is all I got. And so how can we help each other to make this moment work? Because otherwise, it just would be flat, and
Talk to me about auditions. When you're auditioning an actor or actress, what are you looking for? And how important to you is it that they have the scene memorized?
yeah, no. Well, if you're going to memorize the scene, then I would suggest that you actually memorize it by perfectly, because what drives playwrights crazy, as you know, as a playwright, is that they go off book, and then they paraphrase so much of the dialogue that, like, okay, that's not even the play that I had written now. Yeah, and so there, so I would rather. Yes, I would rather that they pick up the script, and just um, and be on and really read the material as it's written. Um, but the thing for me is that it's not so much about what they how what they do in the room, and how skilled and how talented they are. To me, it's all about how present they are during an audition. So when I'm looking at them, and I'm looking at the way that they are actually interacting with either with the casting director or with another actor, and how present they are in responding, and not just responding because that's how they learned it, in their at home, that
Mhm.
they are actually responding to something in the way that they're getting it, because I feel like when they go into automatic, then I feel like that is a lot of work for me to do during rehearsal, to break down the automatic reaction that they're giving. So a lot of my, and this is a trick that I've said in my classes at USC, and even with other colleagues, that I when they come in so prepared and they have something worked out in their head exactly how they're going to do it, I just mess around with it, and I give them a note that is completely different, and see how they're going to adjust.
Mhm.
Because if they can adjust to that, then I feel like, okay, we can be in a rehearsal room together, because you have flexibility and a way to really like adapt into like situations. But But if, when I give a note and I keep a complete different adjustment, and they still stick to the same thing that they learned at home, then I'm like, oh my God, this is not the kind of person that I would be, interested in working with.
Right, right. Um, and at the first rehearsal, when you've cast the play now, and everybody's gathered for the first time and they're meeting, and everyone's nervous, and it's everyone now has made their opening remarks, and then you sit down and you say, okay, let's read the play for the first time aloud to each other. How important to you is that first read through? What are you listening for? Is it important to you, or is it not?
Yeah, it's important for me if they have a little bit of understanding of what their character is actually saying, and not just reading it. That I'm starting to get a sense of their understanding of where that character is supposed to go, and how they are controlling the reading to get to the end result of it. Because I feel like sometimes people come in and they really are just reading it for the very first time, and I'm not sure how helpful that is to me. And obviously a lot of actors, once they've got the script, they read it through and then they prepare for the first read through. And so my go-to thing is that they have read it and they have some understanding, and I wanted to see where they are going with it. And I take notes when they're reading, because I'm taking notes of like, oh, she completely missed that part. Oh, that should have been a question, and they didn't even like ask the question. And I don't know why he's not asking the question. So I mean, I have those things. So just a mental note of like, what are the things that might already be challenging and that I have to deal with, in the process. But I think it's really important for me to just hear their voices, and together, and in some ways how successful I have been to put all of these people together in this play, because we don't really get to read them until we finish casting, and then we bring them all together and we're like, oh my God, I hope it all works out. I hope that all the chemistry that I thought would work is going to work, because otherwise, oh my goodness, how are we going to like survive that?
Exactly. And you obviously work on a lot of new plays, direct a lot of new plays, which involves not just working with actors, but working with playwrights, having writers in the room with you, sometimes not, depending on what the situation is. Tell me about Luis Alfaro and your collaboration, your partnership, your friendship with him.
Well, Luis is very interesting, because he does a lot of rewriting, and so one of the things that we've gotten used to now is that even though he would give us a script to prepare for the first rehearsal, he will come to first day of rehearsal and he'll have a brand new script that we've never seen, and we're like, oh my God, So it's like, so we're so used to that, and sometimes if you don't get even like the first draft like early on, you are waiting and waiting and waiting, and until the first day of rehearsal, and you're reading it. I'm reading it with the actors for the first time, going, where is this play going to go? Because he hasn't given us the script until this moment, But because he is very gifted, and he certainly has a way of telling stories. So I feel like I'm in good hands when, even if he brings in a script at the last moment and saying, here's the new script. And oddly, and it's not actually unusual for him to bring a brand new script on that first day of rehearsal, and on the second day of rehearsal there'll be another brand new script, because he processes. When he hears it, he goes, oh, I need to adjust this, and it's not just, I'm going to adjust 3 pages, I'm going to adjust 7 scenes, but I'm going to put them in this different order. So it's always been an exciting and challenging process, but it's been, but it has worked nicely for us. And of course, when I work with Luis, it's usually the first production of that play. So I don't get to the second or third production of a play that that, like, for instance, when we did Oedipus El Rey, we were the first ones to do it, but it's gone on to all. So I don't know. I'm assuming the other productions didn't have as many rewrites as we had the first time, right? So and and he's been very generous with his ability to really share the process, and he'll always be very respectful and would come to me independently, and would just say, I don't know if so and so is getting this character because of this moment. Should I rewrite that, or can and I would say, no, let me try a few days, and then if not, then let's see. Because he would sometimes he would see some of the challenges in a process, and if it's not getting the right tone or the right quality or intent of that moment, he'll just take it out. And it's like, okay, well, and and he'll have a very good reason why it's being done, and not just because the actors can't make it happen, but he will have a very good reason why a certain moment would change. But it's been an interesting, we've been collaborating now for since 1999, since we did Straight as a Line, an our old 45-seat theater on Pico. So that's been a very long journey.
Well, and since you mentioned Pico, and let's talk about Playwrights Arena. 28 years now, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What was your impetus for starting it in the first place?
Well, the moment that we started Playwrights Arena was during the LA riots, but I think before that I was always interested in new work. Like I said, I was doing a lot of producing and independent directing before I started Playwrights Arena, and I realized that some of the work that I was doing were passion projects of several people that were not necessarily what I wanted to do, and a lot of the things that I was producing and directing early on were works by either playwrights already been published, or there are new works from Chicago and New York and and London and whatever. And it became, at that time, before Zoom, before internet, before anything, it was such a challenge to have a conversation with a playwright in London to say, this moment is not working, and how, and we need to talk about it. It's a several exchanges of missed phone calls and messages, and 3
Right.
or 4 days go by and we haven't addressed the problem because I haven't been able to talk to the playwright.
Right.
So I really set out to. I've always said that if I were going to do a theater company, I would devote it with LA playwrights so that they can always be in the room for rehearsal, because I really want them to be present, and I want them to be able to be around and say, come and see this moment because I don't think it's working, and then they can look at it and we can adjust it and work on it, instead of a playwright will fly in a week before before opening on the first preview, and then it's too late to make a lot of changes. So I wanted to have that time to that the playwright can be in the room with us.
And I think, as I recall, I think that you at Playwrights Arena were the first theater that I can recall solely dedicated to LA playwrights at the time. Now I think there may be a handful of others who are also doing it. But I think that you pioneered that idea, did you not?
Yes, we did. And there's a lot of theaters who are now only doing LA playwrights, but if you look at their history, their history has done like all other plays, but they've shifted, they've shifted, and then they've shifted to
Right.
now they're doing, only LA playwrights. But we were the first one, and we were the first one to actually create a theater that was already intended to do that, instead of 10 years later we said, let's evolve into something else. That's what we wanted to do.
And you were in the old Gene Dynarski Theater, right? Weren't you?
That's the very first
that theater. Yeah, on Sunset, right? I think it's like Home Depot is
That's
there.
right. That is exactly where Home Depot is. I mean, it was
I
that was
remember that
that
thing.
was that was the beginning of Playwrights Arena because we were doing a play with Elizabeth Shue in that space.
Uh-huh.
But then 2 weeks after we opened was the LA riots, and we came out of the theater and there was looting and fires everywhere around us, and so and that's when we decided to say, okay, let's make this a permanent theater that does new work, and so from there we found this space at the old Carpet Company Theater stage, and we took it over from Lise and Elise, and then and we were there for about 9 years doing all sorts of crazy stuff in the 35C theater.
Kathy O'Donoghue is on the chat. She's watching and she says it. She says, "I remember the Pico tiny space. The bathroom was in the back and
That's
20
right. She does.
for the whole.
She does.
Yeah.
She would remember.
Kathy. Kathy's a
Hi, Kathy.
Mountain family member as well. It's good to see you. Somebody wants to know, Karen, is it Karen? Let me get her name. Wants to know, where's her adobo?
I'll get it to you, Karen. I'll get you one.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to just quickly touch base as we're talking about Playwrights Arena before we go into the last section. I just want to quickly find out from you the status of your church venue, because I know that you were planning on launching in 2019. I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we've had some challenges with the space. We're trying to work it out, but it feels like it's with the COVID and with because it is in a school property that and it's already and the school is not having anybody in there. We're having a lot of challenges right now as to our real future in that space. So at this point, the board has been very challenged dealing with their board over at the school. So we don't really know at this point where that future is going to hold. I mean, we're losing hope by the day, because I feel like
sorry to hear
there
that.
are a lot of challenges and a lot of shifting of contracts and agreements that has been going on for the last 3 years, and we're not quite sure exactly how it's gonna pan out. But it's not been.
I hope that it.
Been good.
Yeah, it was. It's such a marvelous opportunity. I hope.
I know, but the one thing that sort of like happened is that their board chair at the school was on our board, and that person who brokered the deal got sick and had to step away from both boards.
Oh.
And once she stepped away, then everything got, oh, well, I don't think that's what we wanted to do. I don't think that's how we wanted. Yeah, I think so. There's a lot of all of a sudden uncertainty once that board member left, because of her illness. So, I mean, she's still, I talked to her still, and she's still like, that has always been the negotiation, is that building is yours completely, which now the school wants to have a little bit more ownership.
I was just going to say that it's amazing, it's remarkable how the loss of just one person can really have a substantial.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about how, for years, Jon, you've been an advocate for diversity in LA theater for years, on stage and off, and you've been calling out productions that have all white casts, and lately I see you posting about that you're now refusing to even go to see productions with all white companies. Tell me how you've become a leading voice for diversity in LA theater. How did that?
Well, I think by nature, as a Filipino American artist, I think I recognize the inequality that is out there. I think because I know I know the challenges, and I know how much more a person of color has to work to get into the room. I felt like if I have an opportunity to do it, which I do with my theater, I felt like then I'll do it, so I can make the changes. I mean, I always feel like, be the change that you want to see, right? I mean, like so if that is the thing that is happening outside in the general, theater scene, then I have an obligation as a person of color, as a Filipino American, to really find a way to, to find to equalize that, and really embrace diversity. And I think it has been a big challenge, and sometimes I think I lose jobs in other theater companies because I insist on people of color in their productions, in the productions that, if they're hiring me for Glass Menagerie, and I'm saying, oh, it would be great if this was an Asian family, or if this was a Latino family, and I think I lose a job because, that artistic director in that theater might be saying, well, hold on, my white audience may not get that, so I'm going to get another director with, with a white cast. So uh, I just feel like there is enough inequality in our world, and and in the theater, that any little thing that I can do to help, promote artists of color, then I'm all for it. And I think, I have been blessed enough that I have worked with other theaters, like Native Voices at the Autry, or even at Skylight Theater, or Actors Co-op, or over at Open Fist, where I've been able to really change the thinking, and bring in, people of color into theaters. I mean, it's hard when it's a primarily white theater, because, they are so afraid to really embrace other cultures. And I think if we can do more of that, I think, there will be a much better way of moving forward, in our time.
Also, you've not only been a game wanting to be a game changer in diversity on stage with actors, but also with now with theater critics, with the press. You're also now involved with a new initiative of wanting to have more theater critics of color
Yeah.
to review plays. I know that you've been in communication with the Los Angeles Times, and I think that you're having a meeting with them on Friday with Craig
Friday, yes.
Picano,
Yeah.
the arts editor.
Yeah.
And Craig, from what I can see, I think he seems open to having a conversation about it. So explain why it's important to have more theater critics of color.
Well, I have several instances where I found a white critic responding to a work that is culturally specific, that they don't get, or they don't understand, and so they brush it off, and it doesn't get a deep understanding of that play. Um, and I think there's also I'm afraid that there is a bit of misunderstanding when you cast people of color in a play that might have been a white family or something. And I think they're looking at, well, what, I remember when we did Straight as a Line in New York, and it was with two Asian American actors, and one of the reviewers said that, it was stunt casting. It was stunt casting, and I'm going, why is it stunt casting? Because you do know that Asians live in London, and it's a place set in London with I mean, they do exist. It's not like I created this fantastical world. I mean, these are people that actually live there, right? So a person of color could give it a little bit more understanding, and give it more value than a white critic might give it. And I'm not saying that all critics or all white critics are bad, or that they don't understand. It's just that when I look at the LA Times, there currently there isn't one person of color who is a theater critic, and I feel like this is Los Angeles. We are in the city that is the most diverse city in the world, and we have all white critics in the LA Times. I feel like why are we not being why don't we have BIPOC critics in the mix to make sure that there is enough representation? You
I,
know,
I can hear the newspaper editors, and I'm not singling out the Times. I'm just saying in general. I can hear editors now screaming, "Our budgets have been reduced. The paper is being cut down. We're having to lay off half of the staff. I have half the number of critics that I used to have." There's all of that to deal with, which only complicates the matter.
yes, and I mean, I certainly I get it, and I am not asking them to change it tomorrow. I think it's a long process, and I think our first conversation with them on Friday is just one of, I'm hoping, several conversations, because it's not like we have a conversation on Friday for 1 hour, like it's all done and we got it all figured out. I think it's really about, to me, it's really about understanding and hearing from LA Times what they're trying to do to change that, and how might we assist them in doing that, and also just a time frame. Are we saying that this is something that is possible next year? Is it possible in the next 2 years? Like, what is reality? Because everybody's suffering. There's no money, and it's not like they're gonna, and there's no theater to review right now, so it's not like, oh, we need to get BIPOC critics by next month. I mean,
Exactly.
it's a long time.
We have about 5 minutes left, so anybody who's watching, if you have a question for Jon, now's the time to shoot it in the Q&A box or in the chat. You mentioned, Jon, about stunt casting, and I want to also just quickly talk about the same idea, colorblind casting, that whole idea. And it makes me think back to 1996 when August Wilson gave that keynote address at the TCG conference at Princeton. I was there. I don't know if you were there I remember being there. And he was speaking out against colorblind casting. And now today, of course, we have Hamilton with a multiracial cast and a black actor playing George Washington. So tell me when you think the ethnicity of an actor playing a specific role matters and when it does not.
Well, a lot of some of it has to do with the time frame and the way that the the cultural specificity, like for instance, if I were I saw Bent, the one that they did at the taper recently. And and I was sitting there, I'm going, okay, I know it's white on stage, but I'm going, well, it is Bent, and it is happening in Nazi Germany, and it was a time when it was either white Nazis or white Jews that were like in the camp. So it was like, so I couldn't really see myself saying, no, you got to put like Asians and African Americans in that play. So I feel like in that way, I don't really challenge it as much as I would. What I challenge mostly is plays that are set and they will say in a metropolitan city in United States today, and it's only white, and their friends are white. They're all like, everybody is just like, the entire play has white people. I'm going, how could this be a metropolitan city in the United States in today's time, and the neighbors, the lawyer, everybody are all white? How is that possible? So that's when I start to question, and I feel like I mean, I think colorblind casting has gone away, because now we're looking at color conscious and really being consciously aware about. I would like I did with Jennifer Maisel's play. It was about a Jewish family, and we were adamant in casting it with an Asian American couple, and and because the Jewishness of the play is only referred to in one line in the play when they talk about the son and getting a bar mitzvah, but the family dynamic is still a family dynamic. So, you know, so I was so in that case, we were really consciously looking at another way of presenting the play, and not just in the normal, like, okay, well, it's a Jewish family, so it's got to be a white family.
Mm-hmm. Well, and now, of course, with what's happening with We See You White American Theater and that group of artists and that very detailed, fully thought out manifesto that they have presented, there's just this seismic shift that I feel is happening, not in the country and in our art form, and for organizations, and now theaters are being called out and are being challenged to really look inward at themselves, at their own hiring policies and the makeup of their staff and of their board of directors. Even at the Fountain Theater, and I'm very proud of what we do on stage, we still are looking at our board and our staff and what can we do. And I want to ask you, for theaters, for theater organizations that are wanting to address these issues of race, of culture, of diversity, of representation within their organization. And some of these conversations can be very passionate, get very heated, press buttons, become emotional. How do you suggest theaters start these conversations within their own organization?
Well, I think the first conversation is I'm going back into like Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So if there is a problem, I think they have to at least acknowledge that there is a problem. Because if they don't agree and they don't believe that there's a problem, then what are they trying to solve? So I think they have to first start with that and start engaging a conversation with their stakeholders, with their board members, with their artistic community, to just say, all right, we think that our theater has an inherent systemic problem, and the problems are these. We don't do this, we don't, whatever the problems are, but they have to identify those problems, because once you identify the problems, then you go, now how can we solve this?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to find a way to solve these problems? So if we have an issue about presenting multicultural plays, why are we not doing multicultural plays? Oh, our membership is 90% white. Okay, so how do we change that? I mean, so you have to, I said this in the LA Times. I mean, you really have to address all of these issues fearlessly, because you have to know you have to acknowledge the problem, and then you've got to say, all right, from now on, if that's the problem, the solution is to get it done this way, and to get more people of color, BIPOC people, or board members, or whatever it is, to really expand the theater. Because some of the theaters are saying, yeah, we want to expand, but they haven't identified what their problem is and what they're trying to solve. And I think once they do that, I think the solution can come pretty quickly. It's just that they have to identify it.
So here's my final question to you, Jon.
Yeah.
So now that we're in the middle of COVID, and theaters are closed across the country, the nation and the American theater is grappling with this referendum on racism. All of this is happening right now, and we're going to be in this for a while. If we reopen in 2021, what kind of American theater will emerge, do you think? Or what kind of landscape do you think you will see, or what would you like to see?
Yeah, I think I would like to see a theater landscape, especially in Los Angeles, that is really embracing the cultural diversity that we have, because we are very, very lucky to have the resources of so many talented, BIPOC, LGBTQ, handicapped artists that we haven't utilized. I mean, you guys, I mean, especially you personally, Stephen, have written plays with deaf actors, with Black people, with Asian, like you've done it, and I feel like that's what we should be. That's what we should be looking towards. That the future should be as diverse as that. And at this time of our pause, I think it's time to really ask around and talk to people and get some guidance from different people, and so that when you're able to move forward and we're able to go back and open our doors, everybody is ready to make those things happen. And there's some stuff that you can do by Zoom or by conversation that can move your theaters forward. And I think that that there are a lot of theaters, including yourself, Native American Voices, Roby Theater Company, Casa 0101. I mean, there's so many theaters that are Company of Angels. I mean, there are companies that are already doing this kind of work, and I think that people should like have a dialogue with some of these people, and really get some guidance as to how to make it work. Because that's what I hope. I really hope that we would open up our doors and we would have a very inclusive and very colorful, rainbow-filled, productions in the future.
Well, speaking of having a dialogue, it's been really nice chatting with you, Jon. Thank you. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you for inviting me.
I've taken you from your kitchen. There are going to be people outside waiting for adobo right now. What a joy and a pleasure. And keep up the fight, keep up the good work. As somebody mentioned in the chat, you walk the walk, Jon Rivera, and we are all better for it. So thank you, and thank you for your artistry as well.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for everyone for staying in, and I really appreciate the opportunity.
And thanks to James Bennett for being our wizard in the background. So that's it for Theater Talk for today, and we'll see you all next time. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.